One last economic development program I wanted to mention is the Economic Development Assistance Program. $150 million is available here, so not as much as some of the other programs. This is more geared towards those communities that have had some kind of economic catastrophe happen to them, such as a base closure or a plant closure. I think much of this funding is going to be addressed towards those facilities that have lost significant plants as a result of the GM and Chrysler bankruptcies. But these funds are being distributed by the Commerce Department. Again, the program goal here is to provide stimulus to communities that have experienced a significant disruption. Natural disasters actually qualify for this type of funding too. It provides funding for major construction infrastructure projects to try and lure additional or new businesses back to these communities. But there is a 50% cost sharing requirement here, which is not insignificant, although it can be achieved through in-kind contributions such as rental space and that kind of thing. Eligible applicants are cities and states, pretty much anybody who has a good idea of bringing new development back to a community that's been impacted by the recession. But the communities, again, must meet certain economic criteria. 1% higher than national average of unemployment, per capita income of 80% or less, and it must be one of these special need communities, and again, you must demonstrate that there has been some significant event that's affected the community. The last, that's pretty much it on the economic development side. A couple of miscellaneous things I wanted to mention before I turn it over to Kathy to talk about energy efficiency. One is a clean fleet program, or alternative fuel advanced technology vehicles pilot program that's being offered by DOE. $300 million available nationwide. This is to reimburse grantees for the incremental cost to purchase new alternative fuel vehicles. So if you're planning on upgrading a fleet of vehicles or buses, and you want to replace a diesel-powered bus with a hybrid vehicle or something like that, this program will allow you to offset the incremental costs as a result of that upgrade. It's not insignificant threshold to enter into this program. It has to be $15 million to $30 million, or $5 to $15 million, excuse me. And so therefore, we're not talking about just replacing one vehicle or two. It has to be something that gets a significant number of vehicles off the road. And lastly, there's something I wanted to mention because the administration made had a lot of discussion about weatherization, and I wanted to make sure you folks were aware of how it's being rolled out in their communities, because there is no real competitive grant program for weatherization. Weatherization is being allocated by formula in an existing program. Significant amount of funding is coming into the state, almost $400 million, whereas in the previous program it was only $100 million. So a lot of money is coming into the state for weatherization. You're going to see people running around your communities doing weatherization projects, and before you miss the boat, you feel like you've missed the boat on that. I want everyone to be aware that this is all being done by direct allocation, and there's no application process for it. So you haven't missed out on anything if you haven't applied for this. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Kathy, who's going to talk about energy efficiency programs.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate the introduction. On the weatherization programs, one thing that happened recently is 14 municipalities were awarded their grants under the weatherization program. 40% of the allocation went to them, so you're starting to see the money actually get out from the ARRA to communities. I'm going to talk about the stimulus package, which I'm going to refer to as the ARRA, and I'm going to talk about primarily what happened with the funding for renewable energy projects. The ARRA has essentially entered the void that was created by the collapse of the financial system earlier in September of last year. So what they did, it probably makes a little sense to talk about how we used to finance renewable energy projects before the ARRA was established. Prior to the collapse of the financial markets, many energy projects were funded using a large component of tax equity. What that meant was Congress had passed something called a production tax credit. The production tax credit was then sold by the developer to a financial partner, and that financial partner would contribute the equity portion of the project finance package for the renewable energy project. When the banking crisis occurred, the tax equity market essentially dried up, and so a lot of developers and bankers in this area went to the Obama administration and to Congress and said, you know, if you're going to really try and see renewable energy projects continue, then we're going to have to find an alternative to the production tax credit. To their credit, Congress did come up with a replacement for the production tax credit, and they did that in the form of something called the investment tax credit. The investment tax credit, which existed prior but has now been expanded from just wind and solar to include geothermal, biomass, hydro, landfill gas, waste to energy, and marine facilities. The investment tax credit was also expanded to be a refundable tax credit as opposed to the grant that we were, the tax credit that we were seeing before. How the tax credit worked before is you would have to essentially claim it on your tax return in order to see the benefit of that financing. Now what occurred with the investment tax credit is that investment tax credit will be available to you in the form of a grant. The other thing that the ARA did is it created an advanced energy manufacturing investment tax credit. So 30% up to $2.3 billion has been allocated for investment in advanced energy manufacturing. It also expanded the bonus depreciation of 50% that Congress had enacted last year through the year 2009, and the write-offs for this can be applied to capital expenditures ranging from $250,000 to a newly increased threshold of $800,000. By creating the Treasury grants instead of the production tax credit, it did that for a limited period of time in order to allow the markets to come back for tax equity. So those credits are available only for projects where construction has been started in 2009 or 2010. The advantage of this structure is it makes the deals a lot simpler. It decreases the financing costs, so those project sponsors who are using investment tax credit grants rather than production tax credit tax equity are going to see somewhere between a 10 and 15% increase in the benefit to them as the result of not having to market the tax equity. Congress also created a 3-year extension of the production tax credit. This is particularly important because renewable energy projects take a very long time to develop. So to the extent that you have the ability to predict into the future what your financing structure is going to be, that's extremely important. For example, if you're developing a wind project in New York, it's very difficult to develop that project in anything under 3 years. And so the extension of the production tax credit should lead to the continuation of development of large utility scale renewable energy projects in New York. There was also $16.8 billion in total direct spending for renewable energy and energy efficiency programs over the next 10 years. $11 billion of that was to modernize the nation's electricity grid with smart grid technology. $2.5 billion was allocated for renewable energy and energy and efficiency research and development, demonstration and deployment activities, and $2 billion for grants for the manufacturing of advanced batteries and components. This includes the manufacturing of advanced lithium-ion batteries, hybrid electric systems, component manufacturers, and software designers. There was $300 million allocated to the Department of Defense for research, testing, and evaluation of projects to energy, transmission, and efficiency, and $100 million for Navy and Marine Corps facilities to fund energy efficiency and alternative energy projects.